So today I'm going to be reading you an excerpt from Birthing the Promise. All right, get your copy on Amazon. It's on chapter 2, which is on the promise. It says, many give up the promise of God for an offer that looks better than what was promised. The conditions surrounding the promise don't always look favorable. Birthing the promise requires you to push through every giant that stands before you. On your journey to birthing the promise, you will encounter counterfeits. Maybe God promised you success in your own business, but then you received a job offer that was comfortable and it caused you to relinquish that dream, that zeal, that drive for the promise. You give up on the promise each time you're too tired to work on the business or too discouraged to apply for another loan, another grant, after the initial denial. You become so overwhelmed by loneliness while waiting for the spouse God has promised you that you end up settling for someone who is unequally yoked. By doing so, you forfeit the life God intended for you and now create unnecessary tension for yourself. You struggle to bring God's promises to fruition as your efforts are hindered by a partner who undermines your progress through arguments, betrayal, infidelity, and pain. When God calls you to higher purpose, you share the dream with the wrong person who discourages you and convinces you that you're not anointed enough to answer the call. As a result, you remain stagnant, unprepared, and bear the consequences of your disobedience. You cannot trade a promise from God for an offer the enemy presents. Let me read that part again. You cannot trade a promise from God for an offer the enemy presents. The enemy's offer may seem more appealing, even more immediate, but it lacks lasting value. When God gives you a word, you hold onto it, refusing to relent until it is fully fulfilled. Attempts were made to kill Matthew. Now, I'm going to stop here. You see, birthing the promise, when you're pregnant and they're telling you that seed you're carrying is not going to be a good seed. That seed is not going to live. I had to tell the doctors, if the seed will not stay, I want to allow the seed to pass on its own. I don't want to be the one to engineer anything. Sometimes we intervene unnecessarily. So I don't want to be the one to come in and say, well, God, this seed you gave me, it may not be, so let me just go ahead and terminate it. They said it wouldn't grow. It grew. It got to 5 months. Did I know that could happen? They don't know that. In birthing the promise, we don't know the challenges that await. I did not know that I will ever, I never heard of the word NICU. Never. Until I had my son. That a child who is not 9 months of age, 9 months in the womb, can be birthed. I did not know that. I know about premature children, right? Preemies that are like, maybe you came 2 weeks early, 3 weeks early. I was such a preemie. I was born a couple of weeks early. But NICU, micro preemies, 1 pound babies, how does this survive? So you can imagine that was my dismay. That was my worry. That was my confusion. And so as they came in, they were saying, and you got to read the book. That's why I skipped chapter 1, because it's for you to read chapter 1 and for you to see the hand of the Lord. But in chapter 2, I begin to talk to you about what is required. What is a promise? When God makes you a promise, that promise does not change until he says so. And because God is not a confused God, usually when he tells you, he gives you a word, that's what it is. What he says is what it is. He will have to change his mind. But he's not confused, so he doesn't normally change his mind like that. And if he does, he will let you know. But that means you have to be listening to the new instruction that he's given in that season. An old instruction may not apply for this season. However, whatever the change is, if you're listening, he will tell you. Birthing the promise requires you to adhere to what was said. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Birthing the promise is the reward. The word is your evidence. What is the evidence of this? The evidence is that God told me he's giving me a son. That 11 years ago, God told me, not by prophetic word, but he told me that my last child is a boy. When I had my daughter, that's the first thing the Lord told me. My last child is a boy. So when I got pregnant, I knew of my second child and I found out she was a girl. I knew that wasn't it. If you know me, you know I always wanted 2 children. I've always wanted 2 children. But when the Lord said that the last one is a boy, it couldn't be the 2 children. So promises that we are given are promises to be fulfilled. And you need to just listen to the one who gave you the word, because the word is your evidence. That is why faith is the evidence of things hoped for. You're hoping for what God said. The evidence is that he gave you the word. You take it to the bank and you cash it. That's it. Be blessed.